Greetings, everybody, and here we are for another live stream. There are so many people here, so many questions, and I will get straight into the questions so I can get through as many of them as I possibly can. Just a reminder, I'm Gary Bembridge. The channel is Tips for Travelers. I try and do a live stream every week when I possibly can. I'll talk a little bit later about next week and the week after that. But let's get straight into the questions. Just a reminder, if you've got a question, write the word question. That's always great to have. That helps me find things much quicker. So there's a couple of questions came in before the live stream, so I want to dig into those first of all. So Cruise RX asked the question, are you familiar with Park West? Well, yes, I am. Them and Clarendon Fine Art. Those are the two companies that have partnerships with the cruise lines, and they run the art gallery and they sell art, run the art auctions. So I'm relatively familiar with them. I've seen them on lots of ships. I personally don't get into buying art on a ship. It's one of those things that I do struggle with because I'm not sure how good a deal it is. I don't know about art. And the thing I always say in my videos is if you're going to buy art on a cruise ship, make sure you buy it because you like it. You know, I'm not sure how much of an investment it is. I'm not an art expert, but from what I can see, a lot of them are obviously prints and so on and so forth. So just approach with caution. But certainly Park West is a pretty big company, and Clarendon Fine Art is the other one. So Ken is asking the question, thoughts on Amber Waterways, African River Safari and land trips. Now, to be honest with you, Ken, I haven't looked at that in detail. So I haven't really explored that yet. I would really like to do the African River Safari. There is across Europe, also do it on Lake Kariba. And I did look at that. It was one that I was supposed to be doing pandemic here, but I just never got back around to looking at it. So I can't really comment much more than I used to be able to run the Cross Europe one, and they loved it. It's one that I would love to do. Tony asking the question, I think that's right. Tony is in a ton of YouTube. What are your feelings about refundable versus non-refundable deposits on cruises? Is there a guideline as to when to choose one over the other? So if you live in many countries around the world, you don't even have this as an option. So it tends to be more of an option from what I can gather so far in the US. Now, there may be some other countries as well. So for example, in the UK, I can only book cruises with non-refundable deposits. So two key things. If I could book refundable deposits, I would always take that because obviously you have the ability if something changes. With non-refundable deposits, the critical thing is have travel insurance from the minute that you book. So if anything changes, you know, you might have a death in the family, you might have an illness problem, you might, I don't know, change jobs and you can't get leave or whatever it is. So the travel insurance has to cover it. So it's a little bit more cumbersome. And then obviously, I guess there's a balance between, you know, paying for insurance early and whatever. But I have an annual policy, which is possible in the UK. So my thing is, I would, if I could, I would take non-refundable because it gives you the most amount of flexibility. If you do decide to go non-refundable, make sure that you have travel insurance would be my critical tips there. Cherry asking the question, so I'm just keeping an eye that everything's going fine. Yep, it seems to be so far. Cherry's asking the question, must-sees in Copenhagen, Oslo, Bergen, Flam, and Helsinki. So that's quite a few. I will go through this very quickly. Sherry's absolutely right. Helsinki has probably the least inspiring hop-on hop-off bus. It wasn't particularly exciting. The hop-on hop-off bus in Oslo is great to do. Takes you some really great sights and sceneries, you know, the Royal Palace and the Maritime Museum, and it was really great. I love the Oslo hop-on hop-off bus. In Flam, the train, an absolute must-do. And make sure that you book it in advance, either on the train line booking or through the cruise line, because it often sells out. And a good idea, Cherry, is to try and book one of the early departures. So, you know, often you might want to then book through the cruise line, just make sure you get, you know, the ship's going to be in, etc. Because then you have the rest of the day to explore other parts of Flam or go further out. In terms of Bergen, there's two things I like to do in Bergen. One of which is go up the funicular, and the other is to go up the cable car. And I always get confused. So Mount Ulrich, I think I'm right in saying, is which has got the cable car, and Mount Florin is the one with the funicular. I'm actually in Bergen next week. In fact, I'll be in Bergen next Saturday, and because I'm going on a cruise at least on Tuesday, and that's what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to be doing the cable car because you get incredible views. I hope it's a nice clear day. And then if I've got time, I'll go back into town, and on the way back, look at the fish market. There's the beautiful old wooden houses there, and go up the funicular. So those would be my key things. In terms of Copenhagen, the Hop and Hop of bus is also pretty good. Explore lots of the museums and that kind of stuff. If anyone has any better tips than I've just given there, please leave those. So let me keep going. Let me just mention that why I did talk about that. So on Tuesday, I'm getting on Windstar Cruises, booked on Windstar Cruises, and I am doing an 11-night trip, which is from Edinburgh, goes to the Shetlands, then goes, I think it's 4 or 5 stops in the Norwegian fjords, 2 of which I've never been to, so I'm very excited about that. Then goes to the Faroe Islands and ends up in Reykjavik. Volcano eruptions notwithstanding, there's a volcano bubbling away that they're worrying that's going to erupt in that sort of area. But anyway, so next week, I may or may not have a live stream. Now, I know there's a question which is coming up shortly from Jeffrey around Starlink. Now, Windstar does have Starlink on. I don't know if Starlink covers that part of Norway. So I will, if Starlink is covering that and it works well, I will do a live stream next week. So I will come to Jeffrey's question in a second. So as I was saying, keep an eye out to see if there is a live stream. I will post once up there. The challenge also with the fjords, and particularly I want to check it out, is often because the mountains, shore Wi-Fi can be pretty rubbish. So I've given up trying to do them. I'll see if Starlink's very different, and I will probably do the live stream on the Sunday because we actually import slightly longer that day. Anyway, Steve asking the question, any suggestions for our first cruise to New Zealand? Assume we need to do a land tour too, but not sure which cruise line to base it on. Would fly from the UK, presumably to Sydney, best time of the year too. So I'm just keeping a little eye on how things are going. So I've looked a little bit at this. You're absolutely right. I mean, the peak, the cruising season in Australia is our kind of northern hemisphere winter. So there's very few cruise lines actually sailing in Australia. Things like P&O, which are based all year round. P&O Australia do sail all year round. So the peak period is really that November, December, January, February, and stretching a little bit into March when a lot of the world cruises pass through there. Now, there are a couple of ships going to be based in Australia. If you're looking ahead, so Celebrity have Edge there, I think the next couple of years. Virgin are sending, I can't remember if it's Scarlet Lady or Valiant Lady down there. And many of the other cruise lines will pass through there. So Carnival are based there. They have a ship there for long periods of time during the season, or Caribbean. Lots of them go. So I would, and there are then some of the higher end lines also go. So one of the things, Celebrity is one to look at because that's sort of, I guess, sort of in the middle range there. And they do have really nice, I think it was 10 nights. Now, we're actually going to Australia at the end of the year, the reason I was looking at this. And I really wanted to do a cruise, but actually the cruises were a little bit long. I think there were 10 nights. And it just didn't really fit with the amount of time that Mark had off. So you can actually do some very good circumnavigation stuff of New Zealand. And you can call on many ports. Now, there are other lines that will do intensive ones. You'll find whether it's Oceania, Cunard, Cunard de More, Australia, actually. Silversea, I've been looking at. Seabourn routes are very nice ones. So you'll find many, many other lines. So it's almost, if you have a favorite line, look and see what they're doing. Some of them do more frequently. You fly into Sydney, a lot of them go out of Sydney and back to Sydney with a round thing. I would really, really like to do. I'd also really like to do the Kimberley. In fact, we were out to dinner last night with some Australian friends who've moved to the UK, and we were just talking a little bit about the Kimberley last night. So Jeffrey, hi there, cruising for one, link to that point I was making earlier. Do you feel Starlink is a game changer or just a new label for the same old problem? So those who don't know, Starlink is Elon Musk low altitude satellites, which do promise high-speed connections where they have coverage on board ships. And most of the cruise lines, or many of the cruise lines, are rapidly moving to Starlink because it is reputation for being much better. Now, I have seen, I haven't been on any cruise, despite all the cruises I've been on, that's had Starlink. So this will be my first one. And as I mentioned earlier, I'm hoping that the fjords and so on actually is one of the areas covered, because not all areas are covered. I did have some friends in Antarctica at Starlink, thought it was really, really good. And so that's in a really remote. So I will find out. It's relatively expensive from what I can see. So, but if I think it will make a big difference, because that old satellite system was about as bad as it can get, and this does seem to genuinely be an improvement. And again, we have to look and see where pricing, etc., settles down. Cruise and stay with JJ. Got a big birthday on April the 25th. Thinking of Alaska one way with Holland America. What are your thoughts on the pros and cons of starting with the Denali break, then cruise south to Vancouver or cruising north? I think that's absolutely spot on. I tell you for a couple of reasons. One of which is you're obviously going to go. It's a little bit of a pain to get to Anchorage and all that sort of stuff. So you get that right away at the beginning. Go to Denali, go to the beautiful lodge, do some of the wildlife and all that kind of stuff. Then I think I can't remember the Holland America goes out of Whittier or Seaward. I can't remember. Anyway, whichever one they go out of. And then you're going to go down and you end in Vancouver. And disembarkation in Vancouver is very easy. Embarking in Vancouver is a little bit more unreliable, a little bit more hit and miss. So I've had some terrible embarkations in Vancouver. So in fact, next year, I've actually booked an Alaska trip, actually on Viking, which goes out of Seaward. And I'm doing it that way because I know disembarking in Vancouver is so much easier. Hotels in Vancouver are crazy expensive. You need pre or post days. It's crazy expensive as well. Although Anchorage, for what it is quite expensive as well. But anyway, so I think that's a great trip. And you're going to see some great sights. Sorry, I just had a little squealing. I think just checking my volumes turned down on my little thing that I'm tracking. I always track on my iPad for those of you who know. Uncle Bob, just remind me, write the word question so I don't miss your questions when I scroll through. When you've had a horrible experience on a cruise and no response to your final evaluation, what do you do? Uncle Bob Baltimore Plains, great name, and he's going to look at that and find out more about that. But I know Jeffrey answered this as well. I think the critical thing, if you're having a bad experience on a ship, I would not rely on the final evaluation. I would actually raise it with the hotel manager, hotel director, whatever they're called. Now, some cruise lines will do these, make it much easier. So Holland America, many of their ships, they have a little box where you can go and pop stuff to see the hotel manager. Other the more market lines will often do a mid-cruise survey. But genuinely, Uncle Bob, Baltimore Plains, when I've had a key issue on a ship, I've gone and spoke to the hotel director and it's been solved because they have the capacity to solve the problem, whether it's an issue with cabin issue and noise, people next door causing havoc, or some food issues or whatever it is. They are the people solvers. So the final evaluations, in my understanding, are very important, but the scores are the critical thing because many of the crew and departments are really rewarded or get whatever reward, I guess the right way, evaluated on the score. So I think the scores are probably spent much more time than the comments. I guess if the comments over time sort of move through, but I have not seen great experience of individual comments being followed up. So I would definitely talk to the hotel director. Stephen is asking the question, when you mentioned status matching one of your vlogs, could you say which? So I'm assuming you say which lines do status matching. So I mentioned it in my most recent video. So thank you, Steve. I will do a punt, which came out yesterday, which is about my MSC experience. And next week will be my Yacht Club video. And the great thing about MSC is they do status match. Now, I thought that was the only line that did it, but lots of people left comments saying that Virgin are also doing status match. So I need to go and explore it. But those are the only two lines that I'm aware of. So the one I've experienced, one that I've heard they do it, I haven't tried it out yet, that do status matching. So it's very limited. And it is great because on MSC, it was very simple to do. There's a form you fill out. I had to prove that I was diamond status on Cunard, and they then matched me to their higher status. So you got all the perks that come with diamond, free a complimentary special dining, early embarkation, pin, and also a bag and all that sort of stuff. So that's the only one that I know. So I'm going to take a slip. So Bob is following up his thing more around complaining. It doesn't sound that we've got an answer, so I'll keep an eye on what those are. Cruiser Stan JJ asking when the summer 2025 Alaska season may go on sale. I don't know. I'm not sure if I don't know if Sarah, Travel Agent Sarah, is here or Gary Pluck is here today. If they are, they might have a better sense of that. I'm not, excuse me, I'm not that sure when they tend to release. A lot of cruise lines have got 2025 up, and sometimes you can get a sense of them because if you go onto things like Vacations to Go, and I think someone mentioned Seascanner, often if you put in the dates, they sometimes will give you an indication of what's going on, but you have to be careful because they're not necessarily 100% right. Kay was asking a question which I will attempt to answer, but I don't know if it's going to answer quite how you wanted. So Kay was asking the question, I understand that you always pay for your cruises in order to offer unbiased reviews. I do pay for all my cruises. I get asked very frequently by cruise lines. I think I mentioned in the last 12 months I've been invited on 11 different trips, and I do them. I go on my own trips for a couple of reasons. One of which is because I feel that it liberates me in terms of what I can say, what I can do, what I can experience. Secondly, it means I can choose when I go. I can choose the lines I go on. I go on lines that I think my viewers want to watch, or I think they will find interesting. I can then choose when I go, which then means I can get my home life sorted out with Mark and so on. So that is absolutely, and it took so much stress out of me because that sense of I've got to deliver. And you're absolutely right. One of the things that did worry me was around what if something that I don't that happens that I would really want to talk about, but I feel I can't talk about it because I'm on this free trip and whatever. Let's face it, the cruise lines invite people to go on trips with they invite journalists from magazines, newspapers, and so on. And they've always done that before blogs come along. And they now invite bloggers because they want, obviously, in return for sending you on a free trip, they want good coverage. They want coverage and they want good coverage. And I found that very difficult. Now, I have not experienced much of cruise lines when I did take trips trying to influence what I said. I was asked once on a river cruise trip where they expressly told me that I was not able to talk about the fact that ships dock side by side, so I didn't do it. And I once went on a trip where I was invited on a launch of a new cruise line, and part of the deal, you had to sign a contract, and part of that was that if I wanted to say anything negative, I had to agree with them in advance. And once I get on a new ship coming out, the cruise line said they wanted to review all of the B-roll, the footage that you do before I could use it. So, generally speaking, though, cruise lines don't influence what you actually say. So, and you'll find most people say, like, I'm saying what I want to say. So I don't want to comment on other people's perspective. I just don't do it because it doesn't make me feel comfortable. I feel it liberates me. I think the other thing that is also very important, though, is I respect anybody who very clearly indicates that they have gone on a press or a free trip. So they use in all their social media #ad, which is what's recommended, by the ASA and so on. #ad in all social media, and whenever you upload onto YouTube, as you upload, there's a little tick you have to give, which it says includes paid promotion, or includes paid promotion, and free trip is counted as paid promotion. So when you launch a video, you'll get a little sign at the beginning which says includes paid promotion. Now I watch many, so I'm going to sort of answer your question by talking about other categories. So I watch many YouTubers in other things I'm interested in: trains, planes, tech equipment. I'll watch lots of those. And I know that they have been given, free flights or whatever, but it's flagged really clearly, and I understand that I'm watching someone who's got a free trip. And I think then that, you can understand that it's a sense of honesty. So I feel they're treating me well. So that I think is the key. So I'm very happy to watch reviews from people when it's very upfront and very honest around what's happening. And that's really key. And there's lots of discussion in the blogging community about the extent people do or don't do that. I think viewers, all your viewers are very smart, and you will know when you're getting good reviews or hidden reviews or whatever. So Stephen asking the question: any substance to the claim that the higher up you go in launch programs, the more likely you are to be offered comp upgrades, interested Cunard? So Steve, I guess conceptually yes. I think it's probably a factor of things, which is how early you've booked. Have you paid a higher fare? Because obviously fares change over time, and Cunard really are not fare matching at all. They're not even upgrading people when you phone and call them at the moment, when you see the big price change. But generally speaking, I think it's a combination of loyalty. If you've actually paid a much higher level, they might upgrade you to the next level. So someone who emailed me recently was getting very frustrated, and they had a guaranteed cabin, but they seem to have actually got a better cabin because they paid more. So I think that the other thing that's very, very, very important with Cunard is they have had a major change in the last couple of months, where they now have moved to the system that lines like Azamara, Norwegian, and I think Royal Caribbean use, where they now open their cabins up for bidding, upgrades for bidding. So they are basically, I guess, sucking out a lot of those free upgrades by monetizing them. So you're likely to find, if you're on a Cunard trip, you will get a couple of months, a couple of weeks, whatever, before the cruise, a chance to bid on upgrades. So I suspect I don't know, but I suspect we will see fewer upgrades happening because people are now bidding for those, for example. And some of those can be pretty good. Tip of those, bid low. I've met people on cruises before who bid on stuff. They got very caught up in it, and what they found in the end is they paid more than they just booked it normally anyway. Lou, by the way, is back, which is great. He's had a really great trip, Australia, Scandinavia, Viking, all over. Good to see you back here. Heike, it's great to see Heike here. I need to check, Heike, whether I pronounce your name correctly, and I guess I'll find that out properly when we go on the group cruise. Heike is going to be coming, I think I'm right in saying, on one of the group cruises. I have 2 group cruises. I'll mention those. One in April next year to the Caribbean, which is a patron members cruise, and the other one is a more open cruise, which is on Celebrity Eclipse from Canada, New England. Really important with that second cruise is there's limited availability. The sailing that it's on is filling up incredibly fast. So on Friday, Celebrity put through a price hike on that, and we still have some cabins held, but we think we might come to pressure soon to release some of those cabins if they're not sold. So if you are interested in that, please have a look at that. Have a look at the pricing. If you go to my site, tipsfortravelers.com, Travelers with 2 L's, you'll find a little tab there called Group Cruise. If you want to come on the Patron members one, have a look at becoming a member or patron if you like. You'll find the join button. If you want it on YouTube, you'll find on Patreon, you'll find the Patreon button. And in fact, you'll get things like, I'll actually put a little thing up here because I've just posted it today. So I've just posted a new patron-only member, patron and member-only video. They come out quite regularly, and this one is taking a look at my studio, which is just part of it. And I talk about some of the slightly more unconventional things. So if that's ever an interest of you, that'd be great. Also, when I'm on trips, I post updates, live video update, bonus updates as well. Anyway, Heike's question: do you use an international calling plan so you can use the roaming option when you're in port? Heike, there's 2 things I do. One of which is I actually have a fantastic deal. So yes is sort of the answer. I have an amazing deal with the plan I have in the UK with a company called 3, which actually unfortunately merging with Vodafone, so hopefully that won't disappear. And that has they have a Go Roam plan where I can actually use my minutes and my Wi-Fi allowance in, I think it's about 45 countries around the world. So if I'm in the US, for example, when I was in not in French Polynesia, but Spain, wherever, and I don't pay anything extra. So I do that as one thing. They do have an option, then you can buy those. So if I don't have that, because it's so crazy expensive, what I also do though, is I put, I have credit on my Skype. So Skype, I don't know, I guess Skype kind of blew out of what's the word, top of mindness with things like Zoom and stuff. But on Skype, good old-fashioned Skype, I bought some credit. And the good thing about Skype is you can landline or phone people's mobiles. So my mother, for example, she doesn't have a mobile, she only has a landline. And so I then have the Skype so I can call it. Whereas before, in a country which didn't have another calling plan, I mean, it would cost me an absolute fortune to phone my mum. So I now have Skype, and it costs me literally like cents. I can't remember, it's like 8 cents, 9 cents or something per minute or something. It's like really cheap. So all you need obviously is Wi-Fi, and you can land under. That for me, Heike, is a great thing. Advantage you can use on a ship. So I would use FaceTime on a ship, or WhatsApp with my sister, FaceTime with Mark, and I can use Skype to call my mum. So that would be my sort of great tip of the day, as it were. So there we go. So I lost with all that doing around. Beth's here, which is great. Mapak, talking about the Skyscanner showing. It's very humid here as well, by the way. It's been very hot. KB in the UK. Sorry to push you, but any more thoughts on a possible Panama group cruise in 2025? Need to start saving. So KB, I'm not sure yet. I sort of want. I was talking to Sarah about this. I know a lot of people, travel agents, have also been asking what's happening. Will there be a Panama cruise? I sort of am sort of thinking I should wait and see how at least the first group cruise goes before I commit to another group cruise. So I have it on my sort of, I use a Trello board with all my to-dos, and I have that sort of coming up every now and again. I did look at some possible options. I think we'd probably be more likely, it probably won't be Celebrity. Celebrity is going to be a great cruise, but the logistics back office is much more challenging. So I haven't committed to it, and I may only wait till I've done the first one. I know that becomes all sorts of other problems because of the timing. So I haven't come off the fence on that. Sorry about that. So I'm just keeping up with Uncle Bob's thing. Calling all ports, leaving for Daniel River Cruise, very nice, with Viking next Sunday. Do you know of any sites or apps that report water levels if Daniel levels are low, average, high? Good question. I have not seen one. And if anyone has seen one or used one, that would be good to know. I've literally, to be honest, when I've gone on a river cruise, I've literally just Googled, I didn't think about it, good app, what's the water levels kind of like. You kind of feel there must be one, but if anyone has one, that would be great to know. I'd love to have that. It'd be good to put in my little sort of resources. Lou's had some good deals with Parkway, so that's good to know. Two in tow, sort of another Wi-Fi question. We're doing a Quark cruise to Antarctica, very nice. Are you on the new Quark ship? Do you suggest on a trip like this, paying for Wi-Fi? Oh, so it's unreliable, it's not worth it. Now, I haven't been on Quark, so I don't know what the Quark Wi-Fi is, but I've been on Ponant down there, I've been in Silversea, and even pre-Starlink, I don't know if Quark have got Starlink, two in tow. I actually had pretty good Wi-Fi. I was actually able to FaceTime home even and post stuff. I wasn't able to upload videos and all that sort of stuff, but I was certainly able to do email, social media. There was a couple of points where we couldn't, like I think Crossing Drake's Passage was something a little bit so-so, but I was pretty good. Now, if Quark have got Starlink, then definitely, because there's some very people like Seaborn, who on Seaborn last season with Starlink and reported very good stuff. In fact, I saw an email from the new CEO of Seaborn, who's done a kind of meet and greet and understand what people are asking for, and she specifically talks about how excited people were about how good Starlink was done in Antarctica, but even on the old thing. So have a great trip. I'm very excited. I'm doing Antarctica again next year, end of next year, which I'm very excited about. But the saving, it's like so scary expensive. I'm madly every month I'm like paying bits of it off. But anyway, Heather, hi there, Heather. Good to see you, Heather. I see Heather actually just posted. If you remember, those who've watched, Heather inspired me to do the Alaska cruises on a budget video, and I saw she just posted. I was just looking at mine before we came online. I think she just posted. Was it Glacier Bay? I think it was Glacier Bay you just posted, Heather, which I haven't looked at yet, but I will do. Put it on my to-watch list. Is it fair to assume that some of the things we didn't like about Holland America might be the same on other Carnival Corp-owned brands? Heather, it depends a little bit what you didn't like. I mean, Princess, in many ways, is fairly similar, I think, to Holland America in many ways. So probably some of those things will be some of the Princess is evolving a little bit more to become a little bit more family and catering a little bit better with families. So particularly, I guess, with teen kids, it might be more suitable. Obviously, once you go into the Seaborn, completely very, very different experience. Carnival was again very different experience. So I think it's more the similarity between Princess and Holland America. I think the others you'd find a little bit different. If anyone has a different point of view. No. Oh, Sarah is here. Hello, Sarah. So Sarah may or may not have answered if she knows when the 2025 Holland America will come on board. This is a good question. I actually have a little short on this. Those little 60-second vertical things. Jay Perez asking the question. I know that bringing booze on board for consumption is generally prohibited. It's not actually prohibited. Pretty much every cruise line will have an allowance. So, and most cruise lines, the simple way of looking at it is you can bring a bottle of wine per person. Now, Norwegian, and I need to go and triple check that, but Norwegian was the one line that didn't have a lot of restrictions. You could bring a little bit more on there. That might have changed since I did that. But generally speaking, you'll find that every line pretty much allows you to bring a bottle of wine. Now, if you have it out of your cabin, they will say they will charge corkage fees. Some do, some don't, based on, and I think most people bring it to have it in their cabin or on the balcony or whatever. So Cunard does, I think you're right. You can't bring a case of wine. No, it's one bottle of wine. So, and again, there's a couple of blogs that list by all of this, the lines that you can do. So this is a good one to Google, like allowance, drink allowance on bringing on board. But the simple rule is one. Lines evolve a little bit around what sort of water you can bring and beer and stuff. So it's always worth checking. The lines are pretty good at saying what they will be. Tivoli Gardens in Copenhagen is a good point. There we are. Okay, Lee and Tony, just asking a question about the MSC Europa 1. So those of you who may not have seen, Europa 1 was due to actually be delivered like now. In fact, it might have been last week it was due to be delivered. And they then announced that it was going to be late because of some issues. We've later found out that it was because of some cladding that's used on the ship. And I forget the name of the company. I actually have an article which I was reading this morning, just briefing up on it. I've forgotten the name of the company, but these panels that are used in the ship, which have failed some EU tests, so are now deemed fire hazards. They have to rectify that. So we're just waiting to find out whether the maiden voyage, which I think is due on the 11th or something, is happening now. Actually, someone from the media contacted me to ask if I knew anyone who's on it to see if they got the letter yet cancelling. It's hard to see that it's going to happen. But anyway, now the question which the Financial Times in the UK raised was the company and the shipyard have made other ships where those panels have been used. So the question is, are there other ships that are affected that will need those kind of fixed or replaced or whatever? But that's the issue. So it's the fire safety issues to do with the panels. Now, many of you may, particularly in the UK, will have heard of Grenfell. It made me think of Grenfell, which is a very awful, not that far from me, but like less than a mile from me here. There was a tower block which had a very bad fire a couple of years ago, and many people unfortunately died. A lot of people died in that fire, and it was because the cladding on the side was very flammable. So I'm assuming it's a similar kind of thing. I don't know that for sure, but I'm assuming it's thing. Just remind you, right question, so I can make sure that I don't miss it, because I don't want to make sure that I miss those. And then what's great then is with the chat, I can skim through, because I know you're chatting and answering questions and getting ahead of me as well. Let me just check everything's okay. Yep. I see a question in the best side, so I'll try and make sure I answer that 3-year world cruise that a lot of people are asking about. So, Mark, do you think the general food quality on the premium cruise lines has been sacrificed as they push for a 2-tier ship within a ship offer? Mark, I'm not so sure that it's sacrificing. I mean, I think obviously what we do know is cruise lines are cutting costs, they're squeezing costs, and some of the cruise lines have admitted. I think Carnival Corporation CEO did talk about that. There's one area that they are going to control very tightly and squeeze a little bit is the food budget. So we're seeing more things. I think what I'm seeing anyway is I'm seeing slightly shorter choices on menus, for example, rather than the quality per se. I think maybe probably in the procurement, maybe down the line there is some changes in quantity and stuff. But I think it's more a general controlling cost things, like on America you pay for lobster now, it's not included. I think you're right. The ship within a ship though is a big push, and I assume they have a different budget. Clearly on the Yacht Club had a different budget because we had slightly different menus. I mean, if you look at Queen's Grill, Princess Grill versus Britannia Grill, it's clear that more money is spent on food there. So I think it's more around controlling the overall food budget, I suspect. Again, that's my perspective. I mean, are they pushing ship within ship? Absolutely. So lines like Norwegian, Celebrity, and all those are pushing it here. Here we are. Sarah's answered the question. Thanks very much. That's Sarah. You're going to sail this week, right? So you'll be able to get that Alaska trip done there. Ken Goes Cruising is here, which is great. So Vegas, I love Vegas. I absolutely love Vegas. So people answer that question. Sabrina, there's a bit good saying a bad ad sea is always better than a good one on land. Again, reminder to write questions. I'm going to try to scan through and make sure I don't miss those. So Ladyship B, chatting from the US, where would you suggest going for our first cruise to another country and when? So I always recommend to people, the 3 biggest cruising areas in the world are the 3 biggest cruise regions for a reason, because there's lots of choice. It's very popular. There's great things to see. So Caribbean, Alaska, and the Mediterranean. So I would say look at the Mediterranean. and particularly a Western Mediterranean trip, which is great because you're going to do Barcelona, you're going to Civitavecchia for Rome, you're going to Livorno for Florence, etc., etc. You're going to see some of these iconic places, and you can see them all in 7 days or a longer cruise if you want. So I would suggest the Mediterranean. The advantage of things like if you're going into Barcelona or you're flying to Rome, there's lots of flight connections, so there's lots of competitions because prices are quite high for flights. So that would be the first one. The other advantage with that relationship is if you have a favorite cruise line, it's almost certain that they will be sailing in the Mediterranean. So you can also go with the cruise line that you love, like, and enjoy. Warren, after 100 nights on Regent, that's very nice. 100 nights on Regent, looking for a change. What do you think about Cunard, Ponant, Smithsonian, or Silversea? It's interesting. I've seen quite a lot of discussion recently about, people asking the question is, I love Regent, would Cunard do it? Cunard, I personally, other people saying yes, I don't think it is a good match for Regent. I think if you go in Cunard Queen's Grill, it is, the restaurant is magnificent, the food is magnificent, it's of the kind of scale of Regent. You can do all the off-menu stuff, you can get your caviar, etc. However, you're then on a fairly large ship. So you're on a 2,000 something passenger. I forget the exact number that Queen Anne's going to be. So you're not going to get that small ship experience, which I think is also integral to it. You're not going to get as personalized service around the ship. So obviously in Queen's Grill, they will know you and pamper you and stuff. But once you head out into the bigger ship, you won't get that kind of personal service. Now, Ponant and Silversea, I think you're more likely to. So with the Ponant Smithsonian, as you're right, they charter a Ponant ship, so you can have more Americans on board. If you go on Ponant, normally you'll have it'll be much more French or whatever. And so I think Regent's direct competition is Silversea, Seabourn, now Crystal, now that's back in operation. And in reality, you've also got Ritz-Carlton Yachts, which could be one to look at. And also possibly, although I haven't been on it, and I get mixed with it, is Scenic with Eclipse, again, the yacht thing. So I would look more that end than Cunard. Ponant is also, because Ponant is probably in that smaller ship category. So those would be a better max. Silversea have moved much closer to Silversea, so you get the flights, the pre-stay hotel, the transfers, and excursions. Now, from what I've seen so far, if I compare, I'm doing a Silversea South Africa in end of January, February, but I'm also doing a Regent, one Regent, I'm doing another Regent in October to Japan. I mean, they have a massive list of excursions. Silversea have a much shorter, smaller list of excursions. So, but they are sort of trying to match a little bit more. Seabourn, you'll find a bit of a shock because there's much more add-ons, excursions and stuff, gratuities and stuff are add-ons. But that would be my sense. Leon Tony saying 40 other ships built in Italy. So we don't know. I guess we haven't. I mean, you might have seen other news reports or confirmations around how many ships are affected by that supplier. I haven't seen anything yet, but Anthony, I'm going to take a little slug here. Anthony, thinking of taking our first cruise on Celebrity Cruise to Iceland. Very nice, with 5 days at sea. Would you recommend the retreat suites and hot topic in the sea up there? Okay, so Anthony, in my experience, I've sailed between Iceland and the UK or whatever twice, and bumpy is the easiest way of describing it. So generally speaking, it's pretty bumpy heading up to Iceland. And I think that's very normal. I mean, I'll discover next week or the week after when we do that stretch again from the Faroe Islands, sort of between the Faroe Islands and Iceland, that sort of very sort of open northern sea kind of stuff there. The retreat is fantastic. Certainly if you've got today's sea, it'd be lovely to have the lounge and stuff. So if your budget stretches there, I would definitely look at the retreat suites. It's great. The deck you're probably not going to use very much because it'll be very windy and whatnot. So it's not going to be out sunbathing kind of stuff. You might have some nice days, but it's probably going to be quite windy and so on. So there you go. Adrian, just about on Sky Princess, any tips? My biggest tip is watch my video or watch other people's videos. That I do have a video on Sky Princess. I was on Sky Princess when we were 2021, and I can't remember offhand, so I'm going to do a little fob out there, I'm afraid. So just watch the video. Caroline, I was happy to see your review of Ponant, Antarctica. Can you see Tierra del Fuego in one day prior? So you're saying a pre-stay. So we actually went, when I went, we went out of Montevideo, and they normally sell out of Ushuaia. So you can build in time before. You need a good day, but I've never done a longer stay there. I've only done day stuff, but I've seen a lot of stuff in one day out of there. So probably yes. Sweet Nature to hear, which is great. Sweet Nature, I know are coming on the September next year cruise. And Dave asking the question, I know you're a fan of Oceania. Do you prefer the R-class ships or the larger ones? Do the larger ships feel more crowded because they have 500 more passengers? So Dave, it's interesting. I like the R-class ships a lot, but they're obviously kind of fairly old and dated. And the problem is the cabins are pretty small. So the balcony cabins are fairly small. And obviously the advantage you can get inside, ocean view, and all that kind of stuff as well. So that makes it very attractive. And I can't remember on the bigger ships if they have those, but and then also putting in solo cabins, which the bigger ships also having put in. So I like the little smaller ships, and I do like the smaller ships more driven by the destination. I love though the bigger ships, the Riviera and Marina. I actually didn't find them too crowded. I found them a nice size, and you realize they are a nice size. Particularly, I did in the Caribbean and stuff. We actually did the Panama Canal because they swapped out an R-class ship for a bigger ship. So we had lots of space by that comparison. So I really like R-class ships. They have lots of character. They're very small. They're very intimate, whatever. But I never felt the other one was big. I love both of them. I do much prefer the cabins on the bigger ships because you can actually get just bigger cabins. The bathrooms are so small on R-class ship. And if you go into the concierge suite, I think they call them. My problem with the concierge suites is they're underneath the pool deck, and they're underneath. I actually moved cabins on an R-class ship recently. It's actually on Azamara, but the same ship, because I was underneath the buffet, and it was driving me crazy. In the night, I don't know what it was, a kitchen or resetting and stuff. And then I moved on the pool deck, and you've got the chair scraping. So that's the problem. The ones with the decent sized bathrooms are there. So if you're happy with the smaller bathroom, then the R-class ships. Rumaki 75, just finished my first ever cruise, 7 nights in Alaska. I'm more a sea day than port cruiser. Any tips, suggestions for transatlantic Pacific cruises? Pretty much any cruise line that you like, you will find a repositioning cruise at the beginning and the end of the season. So you're talking sort of September, October time, ships heading back down from Europe or Alaska down to the Caribbean, and then sort of March, April time heading from the Caribbean either up to Alaska or to the Mediterranean. So that's a really good time to go. You can find pretty much every single cruise line, all sorts of ranges of ships. If you've got 10 days to 2 weeks, because they are relatively long trips, if you get in really early, you can get them for amazing prices. So you can often cruise in a better cabin or a better ship. Of course, the absolute must-do for a transatlantic is Cunard Queen Mary 2. It's the only scheduled transatlantic on the only liner in the world on a very unique ship. So that is always going to be your number one choices. Gene asking the question: do lines reposition from Australia to Vancouver? Well, they sort of do, but it's not as simple as that, because what they do, Gene, is they will go. So I'll use the Queen Elizabeth, for example, which Bob and Holly, I don't think are here today, were on. So they basically will do an Australian season. They then head up to Japan. They do some Japan cruises, and then they reposition from Japan across to Alaska. Then we'll go down to Vancouver, then do some sailings out of Vancouver. So it's a long trip because you need to build in Japan stuff. So there you go. So it's not quite. Christine asking the question: I haven't been on Lyrica, Christine, for a very long time. I'm personally not a massive fan of thermal areas, but people who love thermals always say they're great value. So if you like thermal, absolutely book it in advance and get that saving. I haven't used the Lyrica. I can't even remember what it looked like, but I know I think I saw like Gavin and Luke from Cruise Monkeys. They bought Iona. I mean, the first thing they did is go and book the deal on the thermal spa. So I think I've sort of touched on the question that Hell's Bells around the dining quality. I feel I've seen a lot of that recently, and we'll see. I feel it's got smaller. I think some lines have some issues overall, and I think it's interesting with Celebrity. I've seen, by my experience and other people, is the more modern. If you've got an Edge class ship versus the Solstice class ship versus the Millennium class ship, there's a feeling that as you go through the grades, the older the ship, the feeling that it's not really on ball. I don't know whether that's because the best chefs, or they want to go to the new shiny, the shiny thing. Now, Gil is asking a question which I don't think I can answer in the scale of this one last year, but it's a great challenge. Is what port have you been to where everything worth seeing was close to the ship and didn't need an excursion? Mostly because there are many, 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 many ports where that is the case. So one of the things I always suggest to people is the site what'sinport.com is what I always check when I go somewhere that I'm not familiar with. So like I mentioned, there's 2 new ports I'm going to the Norwegian fjords on this trip that I haven't been to before. My first port of call, excuse the pun, is what'sinport.com, because they tell you, is it easy? Is this stuff around? Can you self-explore? They'll have a little map and stuff. And that helps me decide. So it's actually probably a great challenge that I probably need to think about a bit more, but many, many ports. I don't think there's one that really stands out for me. I can't think of one offhand. Sorry about that. But if other people have points of view on the best port, that would be great. That would be great to hear. Angela, I don't know if I can answer this question. I'll be arriving at Haynes. Would you recommend to take the ferry to Skagway to spend the day? I'll be arriving 11 a.m. and departing at 9 p.m. I'm not sure whether you're going there on a cruise or not. I mean, if you get a chance to go on the Skagway train and it does within that, but I've never done it, and I don't know. I worry about the timing. So if anyone has a better perspective, then please answer that. Paul, looking at New York, 2 days in Manhattan terminal. Can you easily and safely DIY the city, or do you need a ship's tour? So I think does that mean you're overnight in Manhattan? I think, Paul, I'm going to take it from that. I mean, you can get an Uber in, you can get a taxi in. One thing I would say is if you're on, I'm guessing, Manhattan terminal. Sorry, I was straight away thinking of the red hook one where you cannot go into. I mean, if you're in Manhattan, it's really easy. It's really easy. You're on 40-something street, not 42nd, but there. It's a bit of a walk in, so you might want to catch and the problem is because the way the metro runs, it goes down rather than across. So it's a bit of a long walk. I've done it before, and it's fine. You may want to do it at night. You want to get an Uber or something at night, but it's quite busy along there. Candida, I travel solo and find it very difficult to search for solo prices. Norwegian Cruise Line, you put in one person at the beginning, but you can't see many others do. Candida, I have a video around solo cruising and how I navigate all that. So also take a look at this. If you look at the channel on Tips for Travelers, search solo, and that should come up a little bit around that. But you're right, it is fairly challenging to do that. One of the things that's also quite helpful, obviously, one of the easiest ways to do it is get a travel agent to do that for you, which they will gladly do. You won't pay anything extra, and particularly they can also keep an eye on how early you need to book, because that's often the challenge if you want to get a solo cabin. The other thing that I find quite helpful when I'm looking at what's out there for solos is a site like Vacations to Go. Now, I've never booked through Vacations to Go, and I don't use it to book. I book through my own, real person, Sarah, but I find it quite helpful to get a sense of what deals, what's going, kind of thing for solos. The other thing, Candida, is if you do have the budget and you're looking at going on the more premium lines like Silversea, even Paul Gauguin we're back on, and Ponant, if you go to those sites, they have a singles cruise section where they talk about where they have no solo deals. So that's a good one to look at, see if there's ever those there. David, looking for a first-time cruise, 7 days on the Mediterranean, preferably Croatia area. What's your recommendation for around 3,500, 4,000? Not heard the best things about TUI. David, that's a really difficult question without looking at the prices. What I would actually recommend is I I would work with a travel agent. So someone like Sarah Bolton, who's here, someone that you can talk to and say, okay, this is what I really, really want. Heading down that route, you're talking about sailing between Venice, whatever it ends up being Trieste or Ravenna in most cases, and Athens. There's a lot of cruise lines do that. So a lot of it will then hinge on what you really like, which is why I'm saying the advantage of working with a travel agent. I've done it before, and I like doing it on smaller ships. So I've done it on Azamara, I've done it on Viking, I've done something else, I'm trying to think what. But they all do it. Honor America, Princess, and so on do it, which would probably work within that sort of budget size. The challenge, of course, nowadays is you don't go into Venice, so you get Trieste and Ravenna, so Norwegian and Royal Caribbean stuff. It's like up to 2 hour kind of in and out. So it's less glamorous than it used to be too, but for the right reason. Sorry, so let me just have another slide. Liz, I do not know the answer to this question. So how do I contact different airlines to discuss my options flying to the US in a wheelchair that won't fold up? I don't know. If anyone knows, it'd be great to know. Again, I think probably one of the advantages, again, if you've got a travel agent that you can partner with, who can maybe find some of that out. The other thing, Liz, the only other thing I could suggest is a couple of really good airline blogs, like the Points Guy, for example. They have some great resources. And the other one I would always reach out to whenever I have these questions is the guys at Cruising with Wheels. They are really good at all the stuff because that's they travel with wheelchairs and stuff. So hopefully that, I'm not sure I've really answered that. Janet asked a question on Saga. Yes, they do. So do you know if you can? Yes, you can. And when you book, you'll be asked that. Rebecca, coming back to, in your experience, how often do you get the upgrade when upper level cabins open up for bidding? Any secrets? So Rebecca, I don't often bid on upgrades because I am obsessed with the cabin. So I always go, no order upgrades, because once I've chosen a cabin, I choose it because I'm really fussy about the cabin I have. So I don't bid, but I've spoken to many people who have. And it's one thing I always do if I'm looking at that is I go on and look at the cabin above me. Is it showing it's for sale? Because you get a sense whether you're ever likely to get it. Because if it's not available for sale, then it's probably sold out. So like on my MSC trip, for example, I had a look, and because I knew the cabin above, all the cabins above I'd be happy to have, but they weren't on sale anyway, even though I got the upgrade letters. And I was thinking, okay, I was in a deluxe in Yacht Club, and there was only 2 grades above me, so there was nowhere for them to go. You know what I mean? But if you look at above you, and I've had very mixed experience. It all hinges on the sailing, the sail, etc. What I'm seeing people say, and again, it's just subjective, is we're seeing suites sell out really well, and of course, you're seeing the entry-level cabins sell out really well. So I suspect if I was going to be bidding, I would focus. If I'm in an ocean view looking for a balcony, or I'm looking for a better balcony, that's where I would focus for bidding overall. I mean, obviously, in a balcony, you want to try and get into a suite or something like that. That's worth doing. But, because obviously, because it's easier to sell inside ocean views, entry-level balconies, if they can get people to push up, if there's space there, but the blockage may be in the sort of the suite area. Ginny, you've traveled on the Windstar Starbreeze. I have, before it got chopped in and extended. And so did I on Star. It's actually Starbreeze, on Star Pride, which I'm on. So I'm on Star Pride before it was cut off and after it's been cut off. So interesting. What do you think about setting it on in Tahiti in March and rainy season? Would the weather be? Yeah, I've actually just finished off my video. It's got to be edited and stuff still, but all the scripts, and I've recorded all that stuff. And I specifically say I personally would not go in the rainy season, because you want to go to the Tahiti and French Polynesia when it is this beautiful blue skies, a beautiful blue sea. You want to just see it like that. You don't want to be overcast and cloudy. We had one day that we lost because it chucked down with rain, and unusually all day rainy, dark kind of clouds and grey. I mean, it's obviously beautiful there. I would, if I possibly could, go in that peak season, from June through to, is it November, June? It's June, July, August, September. I think it's about a 4-month period, if you possibly can. Of course, the weather, the temperature's great and the rain doesn't go a long time. So if that's budget-wise and timing-wise works, then definitely. Bill talking about making the point on the thing there. So I'm hoping that I can see this the ongoing chat with Uncle Bob. So I'm hoping that we find a solution for Uncle Bob. Right. So I think I've answered the question about the various ships. So let's have a look here. Georgina asking the question: do you know our first Canoe cruise? We're going to Penthouse Suite on deck 6. It's midship, but no, I wouldn't worry about that at all, Georgina. In fact, the fjords, the North Sea, depending on the time of year, go in August. It could be as flat as a pond. So I wouldn't worry about that. And if you get a movement, you'll actually find the movement tends to be that way rather than that way, rolling, because it stabilizes. And in the midships, you're probably not even going to really notice it at all. Martin, unfortunately, I didn't build the ship behind me. I actually bought it many years ago. I have one of QE2 up the top there. Unfortunately, the guy who did it is, I believe, no longer with us, as it were. So, I didn't build it. It does look a bit. There's a Lego one that someone built recently, which is quite impressive. But no, I didn't. So it took me no time at all. I guess is the answer. Claire asking, would I do a group cruise out of UK English port? Possibly, I would do if I do group cruise. I know Point Carroll, their group cruise in 2025 is out of the UK. That seems to be very, very popular indeed. So I'm booked on that as well. So life without cell phones, wow. It's very interesting the point about the landline. Making the point about the landline. We don't have a landline here either. We literally have mobiles and then a broadband connection. So my mum's the old school. Have you ever used luggage forward service? I have not ever used it. No. I always get really nervous about using them, but I hear very positive things. So let's have a look. I think there was a question going from California. You know, I was supposed about MSC. So that was my video this week was about MSC. It sounds like you get what you pay for. Is that a safe assumption? Yeah. I think that's true. I think if you watch that video, something said it was really negative. I don't think it was negative at all. I think I going on that trip. It wasn't for me. It's not a line that I would rush back to. I hadn't been on the line for many years. I wouldn't rush back to. I hadn't been on the big ships. It's not a line for me. However, it's absolutely, I could see who it's for. But absolutely, this is a line which has phenomenal fares, and phenomenal fares mean you're going to get. You're going to get what you get. But I did think in terms of, I think people were very overly harsh on the food. I didn't think the food was, I think the food was great. I think the food was fine. My point, I think I made in the video was, I didn't think the food was terrible, and I didn't think the food was amazing. I thought it was, it was good value, and it was fine. Heather making the point, on Holland America, Princess food is not as good as Holland America, in my opinion. And they've just brought on Rudy Solomare, who revamped the Holland America food. I know you had a bad experience, but to work on the Princess food. So I suspect probably then definitely. So Caroline, I'm not a big expert on travel insurance as such, but my understanding was that when Crystal went bust, people had some success with travel insurance. But I think it's a really good point with travel insurance is you need to check that the line going out of service is also covered. So I don't know that. And a lot of people ask me to do insurance video, and I should look at doing an insurance video, but I'm not an expert on insurance. But I feel like it's so many questions, and probably questions like this are really helpful or very helpful for that. No Name, hi, good to see you, No Name. I've noticed the cruise fares with many lines are significantly high for 24-25. Yes, absolutely, without a shadow of a doubt. Fares are way up, and the cruise lines, if you look at any of their reports, their updates that they give to the city and so on, they all are making very clear that pushing fares up is something they think they can do, and they're pushing very hard to do. Demand is very high. There's many sailings over 100%. And they are pushing prices absolutely, and it's staggering. I was looking, for example, next year, Mark and I go on Queen Anne, and I think it's like 30% higher than the last time we went on. I know it's early in stuff, but absolutely, the price per night is significantly higher. I can't remember which video I did recently, where I was comparing some prices. I think even with my Paul Gauguin, I was trying to say, if you went the same time I did next year, like what would it be? And you can see absolutely price. And I think we're going to see that. So I did say I would answer the question. So Beth, finally I got around to answer your question. So what is your take on the 3-year world cruise starting this fall? I think they're now using different ships. So I mean, it sounds, from what I've looked at it, it's one of those things that's sort of like, it all just feels too good to be true, to be honest. Now, I have lots of people reaching out to me, people going on it. I think it might have indirectly the company, but I'm not sure if it's a company saying, we'd love to have you on kind of thing. So I don't know what that means, book yourself, or they're offering me to go on. I'm not really sure. So, it just seems incredibly inexpensive for what it is. And I mean, the concept does sound really amazing. It's very inexpensive, and it's hard to see how the numbers are going to work. Now, I'm cautious about it / interested about it, keeping my eye on it. So I wouldn't personally book on it. It's not something I'd want to do. Now, you're right on the ship. It's an old Holland America ship, if I remember correctly, now that they've got for that. And I did read somewhere that some of the management had left a while ago, but I don't know if that's true, so don't quote me on that. I'm not trying to spread malicious rumors and stuff. So I think it's a very interesting concept. It's a really interesting idea. A lot of people are very interested, and it's not something that I would do. Travel with Josie asking the question, do you have to pay in full at time of booking? Well, it partly depends. If you're booking very close to the cruise, absolutely. Now, Viking, for example, has quite a long time period before. So generally speaking, you, as with ocean cruises, you normally pay a deposit. And on things like Viking, it's quite a high deposit, and then you pay X amount of time before. And it does vary, in my experience, with the different cruise lines. But obviously, if you're booking a cruise within the final booking balance, then yes, you would have to pay the full time, as you would have to do with oceans. Excuse me. Just going back to flights. So when you cruise with Oceania, do you take their flights or take a reduced price and book your own? Can I think of the years? It's varied on what I do, depending on what I'm doing. So my next Oceania cruise, for example, I'm actually doing, because I was going to Miami. I'm going to Miami in March for the group cruise, but I'm going back in April to do, no, the other way around. Sorry, April is the group cruise. March, I'm going to do Oceania Vista, which is the first time that I could do it. And so I'm actually going to do a Royal Caribbean Symphony of the Seas before that. So I think I ended up booking the flight separately, because actually just the price and stuff was much better, and the hotels and stuff were better. So it kind of varies. I look at what they're offering, and it plays around. In the past, I have taken their airfare, and I haven't. So I look at it and play around. And if I'm then going to try and use Air Miles and Avios. So Sarah's asking that question there. So we have churned through times, churned through questions, and I'm sure there's many more questions that I haven't got to. So I apologize for that. I always look at all the questions afterwards, all the comments. I do take this on board. So I've seen lots of questions about insurance, and please do an insurance one and talk to Allianz and all that sort of stuff. Challenge with the insurance one, by the way, is that it differs by country. That's one of the things I found. It's very country specific, which makes it challenging. But I think there's probably some key principles. So as I said, in terms of next week, if I possibly can, I will do a live stream testing out Starlink if it works when I'm on board Windstar. However, the other thing I would like to say is if you are interested in getting bonus content and extra content, particularly on trips, consider becoming a channel member or a patron. Patreon.com, Tips for Travelers, or the join button. Because what I do, as I do on my Paul Gauguin, is I sent 4 update videos when I was actually on the trip to patrons and members, where I was answering questions, showing things that they do. So, but not quite a live stream thing, but I would go and show what was going on, some insights, go and find out things, show things. So I do those as well. As I mentioned, I do have that video which came out today as well. So that's something to consider if that appeals. If it doesn't, that's great. Just keep watching the videos and keep watching the live streams. So have a great time. I'm heading off, as I said, on Tuesday to Edinburgh on Windstar, which I'm really, really looking forward to. And hopefully I will see you next week. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. So take care. Bye.